For a country where the most popular model month over month are hatchbacks, we have precious few of the hot variety or even the lukewarm kind. Cars that make life just a little bit more exciting. Few manufacturers have tried in the past and they've not always succeeded, and there's always been the case where the diesel hatchbacks or the diesel versions of these cars have been more exciting. Finally, we've got a turbo-petrol in a small car which promises to be fun. Now, we've been itching to drive it ever since we saw it at the Auto Expo, and finally the day is here. Let's find out if the Grand i10 Nios Turbo is a hot hatch, a lukewarm hatch, or is it a case of just way too much engine in too small a car?
First things first, the Nios Turbo looks, well, exactly like the regular Nios, also available with this blacked out grille in certain colors. Still, it's quite a sharp looker with its aggressive front end and creases in all the right places. The rear isn't quite as distinctive, but its proportions are pleasing overall. You can tell the turbo from the badges on the grille and on the tailgate. Its fiery red paint and black roof, a combination only available with this engine by the way, is another tell. You can also have the turbo in teal or white. If you're allowed to be greedy, a different set of wheels with wider rubber would have been just the distinction the turbo needs to seal the deal. Internationally, there's an N-line model with more aggressive bodywork and twin exhaust tips, and we hope Hyundai thinks it makes sense to bring its N-Performance brand to India at some point. Like certain variants of the regular Nios, the Turbo gets all-black interiors with either teal or red inserts depending on the color you choose. It's suitably sporty and it's a well-made cabin with plenty of utility. Space at the rear is more than adequate too, given its size. Being based on the second from top sports variant, the Nios Turbo has a fairly long features list including keyless entry, auto climate control, wireless phone charging, an 8-inch touchscreen with smartphone integration, reversing camera and sensors, and 2 airbags. What's missing is push-button start and a rear wiper. The latter is what you'll end up missing the most on a really rainy day. But you're here to see how the Turbo drives, and it's been worth the wait.
The first thing you'll notice about the Grand i10 Nios Turbo, when you're getting off from a standstill, you don't need to slip the clutch. And that's something that's quite different for a 3-cylinder small capacity turbo engine. Well, obviously the highlight of the Nios Turbo is this 999cc turbocharged TGDI engine. Now, if you want a metric of just how much more you're getting, even though this is a smaller engine, I mean, the regular Nios has a 1.2 litre 4-cylinder, the engine that they call the Kappa. Well, this engine has 50% more torque and 20% more power. Now, this of course is the same motor that's found in the Aura. It's the same motor that's found in the Venue, though the Venue has a little bit more power. In the Nios Turbo, like in the Aura, it's topped out at 100 PS and 172 Newton meters of torque. And I've got to say that even though the Nios Turbo has less power than the Venue Turbo, this engine in this application, this chassis, this quite light hatchback, it really gets you up to speed quickly, and you'll be hearing a lot of that speed buzzer. Power to weight is obviously the name of the game, and there is no beating a nice light car to strap a nice engine into.
The Nios Turbo weighs in at 979 kg at the curb, nearly a couple of 100 kilos less than the Venue Turbo, which ends up being far more important than the lower tuning.
Though the engine in the Nios Turbo makes a little less power than its application in the Venue, considering the lighter weight of the Nios, this feels more explosive. Even though this engine has a very linear delivery of power, it's not going to push you back into your seat. But when we saw the numbers that came out of our V-Box test, we were more than a little surprised. We've never seen a car in this segment break the 10-second mark in the 0 to 100 run, and the Nios Turbo has 9.7 seconds.
The first and second gears are quite tall, clearing 100 kmph before asking for third. Third and fourth are relatively short, making short work of city driving. and it proves to be quite tractable as our roll-on figures show.
We talk a lot about these turbo engines and just how drivable they are, because there's a lot more torque being offered at lower RPMs. So while you do have to drive around the turbo lag in some situations, the good thing is that when you're below when the max torque is generated, the engine response isn't all that bad. It's pretty comparable to any other small car. If you're worried about the 5-speed gearbox being adequate for a highway jaunt, you shouldn't be worried. Thanks to some clever gearing, you can cross 80, put your foot down, they still torque, and I'm in 5th gear right now, and we're at 110. So there's enough shove to pull off your overtake without asking for a downshift, which is quite something. From an enthusiast point of view, the thump from the 3-cylinder isn't terribly exciting, but the turn of pace plus the build of crescendo, it all kind of comes together. So it's not very thrashy, but it does work to make you feel like actually rowing through the gearbox, and that's a good thing.
Mechanically, Hyundai has tweaked the suspension setup and steering to feel more sporty, and subtle as the changes are, it suits the character of the Nios Turbo well. Torque steer is well controlled, and you'll only feel the car tugging to one side if you plant your foot in the middle of a tight corner, a silly thing to do in any case.
The ride quality of the Nios Turbo is another area where Hyundai seems to have got it just right. Now, in the regular car, there were times where it would feel just maybe a little too stiff for our liking, especially at low speeds. But in the Nios Turbo, a car that you want to feel a little more involving, or you want to feel a little more dynamic, it suits it perfectly. Of course, that also leads to impressive body control when you get to the twisties. Given that it is a light car, you do get the feeling that you are cornering the car, you are pivoting around your front tires, and that's exactly what you want to feel. It's a strange sense of involvement that I'm not used to getting from a Hyundai. From an enthusiast point of view, who always wants a car that's just a little stiffer, a little quicker, the Nios Turbo seems to draw a nice balance between ride quality and cornering prowess. The roads are quite slick and slippery today, but despite the relatively narrow section tires, the Nios gives you a very good sense of speed from the steering. I know it's quite unbelievable to hear that about a Hyundai steering, but they have done a good job with this car.
The brakes are standard issue discs up front and drums at the rear, and stop the Nios Turbo from 100 kmph and 43.1 meters and 3.1 seconds. You do feel the rear end go a little light under heavy braking, but it's not alarming. Turbo engine fits the small and light Nios perfectly, and it shows in our efficiency test too. The Nios Turbo managing near 15 kmpl in the city and a little over 20 kmpl out on the highway. Just for the explosive performance and character of this car, it's worth the asking price, which is under a lakh more than a corresponding sports variant with the not very exciting 1.2 Kappa engine. Its direct competition may not be a lot more money, but it's definitely getting on in years, even if it does have its own advantages. A small light hatchback with great performance and everyday usability is exactly what scores of enthusiasts have been asking for, and the answer seems to have come in the most unlikely of packages, the Grand i10 Nios Turbo. Drop a comment if you appreciate a manufacturer introducing fun-to-drive variants like this one, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the OVERDRIVE channel.